mostly just friendships, or kind of like unlikely friendships, I would say, in a lot of ways. Like, queerness tends to bond people, even if you weren't friends beforehand, you have some kind of shared understanding. I'm not really actively a part of any queer spaces.
Beginning of this semester, I started the Transgender Non-Binary Support Club.
I don't really go to the school stuff. It's not like, let's, you know, go out and paint a fence and be queer, or do a dance and be queer. It's just like, let's sit in a circle and talk about what it means. Maybe they do go get pizza and stuff, and I just haven't, you have to like sit through 5 before they let you come with them to go get pizza or something. I'm a Unitarian, so I don't think it's ever really felt too out of place.
It was in the process of being ordained in the Presbyterian Church when I kind of had a coming out experience for myself. That time the Presbyterian Church was nowhere near ordaining anybody who was self-avowed practicing homosexual, which always made me laugh. I'm like, well, what if you're not practicing? You know, you already got it down, you know. I came out to the committee and left the Presbyterian Church and went to the UCC.
A lot of my family who died previously is buried in traditionally Jewish cemeteries, and a lot of the time you're supposed not to be able to be buried in a Jewish cemetery with tattoos, and of course I violated the fuck out of that. I think in a matter of feeling out of place, it's just that, you know, for the bits of the Torah and passages that I know, you know, women aren't really looked at in that good of a way, and for me to be someone who's like becoming the woman I am, it's very painful to see that the bulk of the faith is like, oh, you're dirty, or oh, this and that, and it's not a good place to be, you know, as a woman in most Western or Abrahamic religion, because you're considered like this submissive, subversive class of people, and that's hard for you to kind of look at. And for me, it's always been a matter of, how can I, you know, have this religion in my life when I don't feel respected by it.
I think there's some difficulty often in religious spaces and wanting them to feel like they fit my narratives or the way I perceive the world, and knowing that they don't, and so I'll get angry or like resent the space. When I'm actively seeking out religious spaces, it's to build community, so it seems kind of counterintuitive to sit there and stew, particularly like being in college and a religious space that is offered to me as Hillel, and that's not a space that I'm gonna bring my queerness into. Being in a space that is supposed to speak for and to me, the fact that it doesn't, or the way I know that the world actually works. Like, it's a fact that there are gay people everywhere, but we don't talk about it. Like, I love being a part of the Jewish community, but I don't know if the Jewish community would love me being a part of it at times.
I haven't really thought about, looked at religion in a very specific way for most of my life. I mean, you can see it from my last name, Cohn-Levitt, the most Jewish fucking name there is. I guess the big thing is, during Passover, my mother always used to read passages that would refer to God as he and say she, mostly just to mess with some of my older family who my mother doesn't like that much. There's always been this like concept of looking at God as this female concept, not this always reserved for male concept, and I think that's like my earliest memory of having a kind of almost queer space made for, you know, Judaism or kind of religion in my life in the first place. I haven't really necessarily tried to bring religion into my queer space. There isn't really a space for people who are queer or kind of queer ideology in religion. It's really a matter of finding your kind of sense of queerness, sense of self in religion, and just taking out the pieces that fit, because a lot of the time there isn't really a space made for you.
The first thing that came to my mind was when Mimi and I got married, my partner at the time, and we could not think of that as a wedding. And we laugh about that now because we were both wearing white dresses. It's in the church, there's flowers, there's candles. In some ways, it feels like we were bringing a queer space into the church, except for us, the queer space was our relationship, and we needed this religious part in it.
My church is pretty LGBT open. Religion has opened LGBT to me more than a queer space has opened religion to me. I feel like a lot of younger queer people kind of reject religion, just because we're very westernized, and there's this like loving God that we have, and a loving God wouldn't let you suffer like this.
The other place that's similar to that is our kids. When they were baptized in the Episcopal Church, I think we felt like this is our queer family identity as these children, and so what we do is we baptize them.
I'm Jewish and I'm like very excited about being Jewish and like having like radical queer Jewish kids and like integrating them into a world that looks like that, but I don't think my world ever looked like that. I don't know, I don't think about the intersections of the two a lot because I don't feel like I'm coming from a particularly contentious like space or community or a place where my religion has ever like impeded the way I thought of my queerness. I think it's interesting where we have those conversations about religion that can be really polarizing. Often like, not I'm hesitant to bring up my queerness, but I don't ever want to insert it into a conversation, but particularly in certain spaces or in religious spaces, I don't want to open up that can of worms sometimes. And also, like, my drive isn't to create a different type of, like, inclusive religious space that I would never feel like the person who had to bring that up, because then I feel like it would bear a lot of responsibility on me.
A lot of what I do is just trying to invite different kind of facets of society into my queerness rather than trying to put my queerness in it. What I did, you know, for Passover is my friend and I did this, like, off-campus, inclusive, queer-based Seder.
I'm still fairly a new Episcopalian, but I do appreciate the feeling of home that I feel at Episcopal Church. It's been interesting, though, being in Harford County, I'm not going to lie. It's a more conservative county to be a gay out Episcopalian. I find that I do tend to keep a little bit more of my personal life private, but at the same time had boyfriends who've come to church and they've been received with open arms and no judgment at all.
The last person that I dated for a significant amount of time, I always wondered, like, if we got married, if I would want to have a Jewish wedding and what that would look like and how that would all operate. And I think that's the only time that I've ever, like, been very realistic about the possibility of trying to merge the two. And she would always ask, like, well, what do Jews think about queer people? Like, what do they think about that? And I'd be like, honestly, I don't know, because I don't want to ask. I'd much rather be willfully ignorant to a space that, like, gives me community and makes me happy. I don't know. It's sometimes nicer to exist in that, like, comforting, naive limbo than feel, like, very outside of it.
The reality for me is that these things are integrated. Me as a queer person, the religious pieces were already part of my identity as well. Like, I already understood myself as created by God. So it just wasn't particularly separate. My coming out was in divinity school too, so that all the spaces were literally, I think, merged.
I don't know that much about God, to be honest. I've been trying to be more religious lately. Like, I feel like there is something missing in my life. I feel like that there is a God and that he or she is listening, just kind of just let stuff happen. Like, it's their job to just watch over us. Like a game of Sims where you just kind of hit fast forward and see what they do. It doesn't, like, necessarily want me to be queer, but, like, God's cool with it. You know? They're not two separate aspects of my life that I'm forcing together. Whatever exists out there is going to accept me as a whole being.
I find it's more easy to come out as gay in a Christian setting or within the church than it is to come out as a Christian in the gay community. I feel very hesitant to express religious beliefs on social media, for example, because a lot of my friends are gay, and then I think it's pushed a lot of people towards atheism, and there's a sort of an arc of society that's come forward that people seem to be dropping away from religion quicker, and it's because of a lot of the judgment that they feel from evangelical Christianity, I should say. I think the church has an important role to counterbalance that. The message that's going out to gay people, to queer people, to people who identify in a different way from evangelical congregations is one of judgment, one of damnation, that type of thing.
You know, I do kind of keep religion and my queerness separate, but I guess given that I was raised with some small degree of faith, it's still a part of me. I guess I'm trying to keep positive. You almost have to kind of push religion off to the side, at least in my opinion, because it's so hard to balance being queer with having some connection to religion, because there's just so much negativity associated with being your whole self insofar as being queer in, like, the way and how that relates to scripture. There's not really a compatibility with those two.